Yeah, welcome very, very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure and a deep, distinct honor to welcome to the program the Honorable Ramsey Clark. I think he probably needs no introduction whatsoever to the thinking audience of Manhattan. He's had an illustrious career we're going to be talking about. He maintains an interest in improving the human condition that goes back throughout his whole lifetime in a very vigorous and important way. And Ramsey Clark, it's an honor to welcome you to Conversations.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's very good to be with you here on April 10th, 2013. We've had a couple of programs with you over the long haul, and I congratulate you on a career that's sterling. But I'm wondering maybe we could go back and share with the audience that you were from an illustrious family. Tom Clark was a Attorney General of the United States. He was also Supreme Court Justice. And you were deputy and then finally Attorney General of the United States back in the term of 67 to 69, I believe, right? I wonder maybe you can cast back to then what your thinking was at that very tumultuous era. That was Martin King, Voting Rights Act, all of these major Woodstock, all of these kind of events. It was a time of great explosion going on. Maybe you can cast back about your thinking or your inclination in terms of the human condition at that time, and then we'll bring it up to date because there are a couple problems left in terms of the operation of Spaceship Earth that we might
Maybe
get
bigger,
to.
huh?
But if you could share some of those years then.
Well, I came into the government January 20, 1961, beginning of the Kennedy administration. I was pretty young. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
I'd been conditioned by the 50s to be very concerned about civil rights. We'd
Yes.
had all kinds of killings and school conflicts and
yeah.
desegregations and coming up through the 50s. And
It was apartheid.
it was a strict apartheid in the South
Yeah.
and discrimination everywhere. But I think the country was tired of it in the main and up for it. Although we didn't, no civil rights legislation was sent up until '63. President Kennedy sent legislation up in the spring, late spring, early summer of '63. This is after the Freedom Riders in '61. You remember
Yeah,
when
God
kids were
bless
getting
them.
knocked
Yeah.
down? Yeah, they were wonderful young people. Took big risks.
Absolutely.
And, '62, Meredith was admitted at Ole Miss against passionate opposition of, sadly, the student body. And I spent the first week down there with him on the campus, and
Good for you.
astounding
Thank
to see how much prejudice there was
you. Yes.
in the
Right.
cursing at him. You know, what's this man doing on our
yeah.
school?
It was really ugly.
Yeah.
Strange fruit. And,
Yeah. '63 was Birmingham and hard times and the death of President Kennedy, which
Yes, indeed.
affected so much.
Absolutely.
I stayed on until the end, to the end of the Johnson administration, full 8 years.
Helped get the Voting Rights Act.
Voting rights came after the '64 Act. The '64 Act was a 10-section act, and public accommodations are the most controversial. Public
Was it?
swimming pools, and
Okay.
public
yeah.
theaters, and public motels, and all kinds of stuff like that. Anything that opened itself to the public in commerce, you couldn't discriminate on account of race, which gave us a big enforcement challenge.
Absolutely.
It was
Yeah.
Pretty.
And a big step, a huge step forward. Yeah.
The principle was enormously important and expansive.
And timely.
Past due, long past due.
Long-
Shouldn't
what-
have been the problem in the first place.
Absolutely. The nation was founded on slavery,
Yeah,
in a very
that's
real
right.
sense, and the economics and so forth. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
That's right. And went on, still founded on underpaid labor.
Yes, right. It continues, unfortunately. Yeah.
The 1% keep that wage down as low as they can.
Yeah, right. You can cast back over all of history, I don't know, from Hammurabi to Fifi, to crowned heads of Europe and so forth. There's always been this idea of realpolitik. Whoever's got, the Vikings had an advantage. They could do what they damn well pleased, the law or notions of the ontology or something, be damned. And it's still, in a certain sense, in many quarters, continues to exist as seeming source of political legitimacy in the mind of a lot of people, which ought to be questioned.
Yeah.
And you've questioned it heartily, and I thank you for that.
Well, our administration questioned it. I was on board both Kennedy and the Johnson administrations.
Yes.
The real progress came after the death of President Kennedy, but the commitment to it and energy burst out.
Johnson picked that up, didn't he? Was it a surprise to many of the political class or the intellectually relevant, the degree to which he committed to that law, the war on poverty and so forth, and got through a great deal of progressive things, which might have come as a surprise to many, but he did do that, and then got all entangled, and that got all undercut by that damn Vietnam War.
Well, I think he was more responsible than anybody for what we call the war on poverty.
Yeah.
War was the only way we knew how to change things, you know. But he would, it was amazing. Sometimes he'd tell a story about when he was a school teacher. He started out, he graduated from San Marcos State Teachers College in San Marcos, Texas. He went down to a town called Catula in the valley, down Rio Grande Valley, South Texas. And the children were all little Mexican-American kids, and they came to school without shoes on.
And you were out of Texas, right?
I came from Dallas. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But he would cry when he'd start talking about the kids having no shoes, because he came from the hill country, a lot of Germans up there.
And those were not crocodile tears. Those were real.
Yeah, they were real.
Yeah. Okay.
No, they were very deep.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Deeply felt.
And it was the same with you.
And private. I don't think he ever cried in public about anything.
Yeah, right. He was a tough cookie.
Yeah.
He could really persuade.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were involved in that, and I thank you for that. And you've been involved in the questions of justice and peace and so forth throughout your whole life, it would seem to me, and it continues.
Well, I like to think so. I got on board fairly early. I joined the Marines when I was 17. It was end of the war. I was still 17 when the war was over, for some months after it. But I saw enough of what war does to people to think we've got to find a better way.
You also had a very rich educational background. You are an intellectual of high order, if I may say so, as well as a man of law and so forth. But you have a wide understanding of the history of the human condition and that sort of thing, which serves you very well as an inspiration to a great number of us. Again, I thank you for that.
Well, I was lucky. In a sense, we ought to thank the government for it, because I joined Marines before I finished high school. But when I came out, I had the GI Bill.
Yeah. So did I, if I may.
Yeah, I got 3 degrees on the GI Bill. Didn't have to work. Got married and didn't have to work.
Right.
I mean, my wife and I could live on and pay our tuition.
Right.
I didn't have to pay tuition really, but the GI Bill paid all my tuition. And I had enough cash that they paid me $90 a month. You could live on $90 a month in those days.
Amazing world.
We just had a good time on $90 a month.
Right. But you've educated yourself well, not only to the law, admirably and so forth, but also you have a great grasp of history and the linking of the major events that make up the human history and so forth, for which I thank you.
Well, your education should never end.
Thank you.
I've been learning ever since I left school.
And
I got a master's. I got 3 degrees on the GI Bill: a BA from Texas, and a MA in American History from the University of Chicago, and a law degree from Chicago. All without having to work, and that's what we ought to have for our kids now. My God, see these kids come out of school with a $90,000 debt or something like that.
It's horrible. It's like indentured servitude or something, almost a huge thing. That's a bad degree. And it's a bad development that's happening.
It really is.
And there's a lot of other
consequences are worse than we realize. Too. It's a real handicap.
You did your master. You did your degrees in history, American world history.
Yeah. I wanted to get a PhD, but it was time to get serious, and we were going to have babies and all. So we left after my master's.
And let's not forget, your father was Tom Clark, a major figure. Political and judicial. He was an associate judge on the Supreme Court of the United States as well as Attorney General. So that was the family background in a certain sense, and was
Well, it was family during my lifetime.
mm,
He went on. He became Attorney General at the same time as I went into the Marine Corps.
uh-huh.
So I missed those years because when I got out, I went down to Texas to go to school.
Was that at
university.
Austin?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Uh-huh.
And then he went on the Supreme Court when I was in law school at the University of Chicago.
Boy, okay. Well, I thank you for that and everything. And you've been, as they say in, the vernacular, you've been on the case your whole life, it seems to me. You've been looking against the poverty and the injustice that's so endemic to the system. And you've been involved with that. I know you and I were very much connected in a certain sense when Mr. Ronald Reagan bombed Libya. They had bombed with those troops, and everything. And you were there. I think I was there a couple of weeks after you got there. But whenever there's something that breaks out, the Sudan with the bombing, it breaks out on Monday, and you're there by Tuesday. It seems to be you and John Alpert. You've been doing that working with the media and that sort of thing, and you've got a real strong sense of calling to question the premises by which war and so forth is being launched in the name of the United States, which is admirable.
Well, I don't know about admirable.
Well, to me, it is
It's been a
admirable.
challenge, and it's been very satisfying work. I love it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
You would not want to be doing anything else. Okay, well, that's a very good thing
I
to be
can't
able
take
to.
credit for sacrifice. I know
Yeah,
exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, but you've been doing that, and I remember in you and John Alpert, if I'm not mistaken, when they were going to bomb, just simply got in an automobile. If I understand, got in an automobile, went to Jordan, and drove to Baghdad and started shooting. And I'll never forget that. That was a wonderful thing that you and John Alpert just picked up a camera and went. And
Now, John carried the camera, and he took some great footage.
yeah, but I mean, to be right, just take the car and drive over there instead of going through some sort of a clearance or some sort of embeddedness or anything like that.
We wrecked
You were
that
just
poor taxi driver's car.
I beg your pardon?
I said that taxi driver's car was a wreck when I got back here. I'll tell
I
you.
bet.
I wish we'd never gone on that expedition. But we drove. It was it was a 6-week bombing, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Gulf War in '91, and we were there
Horrible.
for the second, third week of the bombing, and we drove from as far north of Baghdad to Basra and out into the desert where the heavy killing was, where all those soldiers were just slaughtered by U.S.
You got down to Basra?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in Basra.
You did. I didn't realize that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that
Basra was hit very badly, but the real killing was west of there. All the cars were coming back with coffins on top, little taxi cabs and things, bringing coffins back
yeah.
to get buried.
And you were able to critique the no-fly zone, the sanctions, the terrible devastation delivered down on that country by the sanctions. Was it?
The sanctions were genocidal.
Yeah, right.
There's no question about it. In August of '90, the sanctions were put on in June, or no, they put on in August. That's right. 1st of August, the sanctions came on, and by November, it was reported that 47,500 children under the age of 5 had died as a direct result of the sanctions. Couldn't get things that infants and little children need to stay alive.
Not to say compromising water systems and sewage systems.
Yeah,
and all
that sort of
sorts
thing. Boy, you drink some bad water when you're 2 weeks old and you don't last very long.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
you're a goner.
Mm-hmm.
And then 4.5 years into the war, they came up with almost 500,000, 480 some odd thousand children under the age of 5 dead as a direct result of UN sanctions.
It's a war crime.
It's genocide.
It's genocide.
It's worse than genocide. It's infanticide. You know,
Yeah,
childicide.
yeah, right. Those are children, right?
Yeah.
And that's when Leslie Stahl had a talk with Madeleine Albright.
Elderly too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Leslie Stahl asked her. She read that report. It
Yes.
said 575 or 85,000 children dead. Is the price worth it?
Yeah.
And Albright looked right at the camera rather than at Stalin said, very difficult question, but yes, we think the price is worth it.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing that
Yeah.
people can take that kind of a position?
Well, just playing for the team, you know.
I used to go when I was I've been doing this for 45 years. I took the first border pack. I used to go to Washington quite a lot. And among others, I would say I can remember that Paul Wolfowitz and what's called the neocons, he was thought of by a lot of people as being a voice in the crazy wilderness or something, or crazy like that. But he was saying, way back then in the 70s, we have to invade Iraq. He had that picture in his mind of the strategic importance, you know, talking. So, I mean, they brought it to be, but I mean, it had been in the works for a long time, and they're thinking, what is it? It's just oil? It's just,
Well, it's power and hatred, and it's deadly. I'll tell you, Iraq has not had a peaceful moment since the Gulf War began.
That's right. And
January of '91.
Yeah, and we just celebrated the 10th anniversary of another thing with Iraq.
Yeah.
didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah. But and of course, Bush's invasion in '73 is much deadlier than not in '73, whatever year it was, '83, I guess. Yeah. Much deadlier because it took our troops right into the capital. And,
That's right. Yeah.
and,
Shock and
the country's
awe.
never gotten peaceful. Every day people are killed there.
I
still.
congratulate you, Sarah, and some of the others who brought about that war crimes tribunal about that and called it a war crime. And you
Yeah.
brought forth saying it was a war crime, and you were in favor of the impeachment of Mr. Bush for war crimes and so forth, which was that was the sentiment of a great number of people around the world and even in the United States of America.
And it's important to remember it began with a crime against peace.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was peace and we brought war.
Yeah.
And then in the war we committed war crimes,
Uh-huh.
right and left,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
with high technology against essentially defenseless people.
Yeah. Well, is that the history of the world? You have a sweeping understanding of the history of the world, and it seems to me that it's always been in place for ever, continues, that whoever, as Mao said, whoever's got the the gun rules, and it's all a matter of who's got the military technological advantage, can go and conquer or subdue others and bring them to the will, and that the basis of so-called historical legitimacy of a particular system is based on their military prowess and so forth. Has it always been like that? It continues to seem to be that way, maybe modulated a little, but...
Technology plays a bigger role than it used to.
Yeah.
I guess in the early days, your bows and arrows and swords were not that different,
Yeah.
But now the technology is determinative, and its capacity for destruction is omnicidal. Can kill everything.
And people will claim historical legitimacy based on their ability to cower other people.
Yeah.
It's bullying.
And kill.
It's bullying and kill
Yeah.
and so forth. And they will claim historical legitimacy based on that and their ability to manipulate the consciousness of people given their overwhelming advantage.
They claim virtue as well.
They will claim virtue, and then they will also say, as always, every force that goes to the battlefield has God mit uns on their belt, that their God is the one that gives them the power to be historically legitimate.
Yeah, it's tragic.
Can you see what you're thinking now here? This is 2013 now, a lot of water under the bridge, a lot of injustice. It's hard to know where not to look for in any aspect, sociological, political, that does not see injustice in the world. The disadvantaged people of the world are still suffering on just dismal situations. What is your overall prospect in this 2013 about the trends that you've been able to observe over these decades-long experience, and then maybe looking into the future? It's this trite thing. Can you see rays of optimism for major transformation that might bring a real liberated order to the world situation? Or are you also worried about the weapons, particularly the weapons of mass destruction that have been developed to undergird that claim to historical legitimacy? The Gatling gun made India's submission possible by the British and so forth.
Well, I am an optimist by choice and determination.
Good enough.
Because
Yeah.
you have to believe that we can pull through.
Yeah.
But we haven't made it easy, and now it's extremely dangerous. Our technology is omnicidal.
Omnicidal.
Yeah, we've had one trial on the Trident II nuclear submarines. We've had 4 trials on the drones, but the drones are just a distinctive weapon for murder.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
mob wipeout, like it's.
Sometimes you even get the person you're looking for, but
Yeah, everyone. Yeah.
but if you look at the Trident II nuclear submarine,
Yeah.
its capacity, one of those submarines could take out 140 cities in China
Good grief.
or in Europe.
Good grief. One.
With bombs that are a lot bigger than Hiroshima, a lot bigger,
Yeah.
a multiple,
Yeah.
10, 20 times. In a 50-mile crater in diameter.
Have we a chapter and verse on just how destructive are the collective capability in terms of omnicide, you use the term, or of the Homo sapiens species, let's say, if they were to be unleashed in a spasm of hatred as been the wont of mankind, just how much, does it ever get to be where I've seen Ellsberg and other people talk about its species lethal capability that is in the weapon systems that exist in reality now, which...
Sure they are. First we got to look at where we already are if we never use any of those weapons.
Yeah.
Because look at how weather's changing and
that's true.
Accelerating, and the ice caps, my God, ice caps are going very fast.
Absolutely, yeah.
We don't know what the windstorms and all. But if you just took the one weapon system of the Trident II nuclear submarines, the Pacific Fleet has 30 subs. They've got 8 at sea.
How many?
30.
My
But
God.
they're big. I mean, these are
Pacific
monsters.
only.
The Pacific Fleet alone.
Yeah, okay.
They've got 8 subs at sea at all times on alert.
Uh-huh.
And each has 140 warheads
Mm-hmm.
and missiles that can carry them. Just think of 140 in Europe. Try to pick 140 cities in Europe, you know.
Indeed.
From one submarine, one
Indeed,
captain,
yeah.
fire. You know.
Incredible.
Take your time to get them off the ship, but it's something that reason can't support.
Yeah, right.
Not to mention human goodness.
Yeah, right. Is it qualitatively new from Guns of August time, Barbara Tuchman, First World War,
Oh,
Second
sure.
World War?
Oh, yeah.
It's Did we cross a qualitative line up that path of destructiveness of our fellow man?
Oh, one sub can take out Europe,
Yeah,
China,
yeah.
North America.
Where were you in 1960, at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I was in the Department of Justice at my desk.
I've never been so frightened. I don't know if you felt that way. I was never so frightened as that moment. But apparently we were coming up a path that it got ever more destructive and they keep developing new wave weapons and things like that. The idea of having geopolitical advantage over the other military terms is still what motivates the great powers. And if we cross the line, if I may, if we cross the line where the weapons that exist in reality became, as this term, species lethal, do you think we've crossed that line, and if so, when? Apparently there would have been a few scraggling survivors of the destruction of civilization when the Cuban Missile Crisis were aimed with all those weapons. But do you understand what I'm getting at? Is there an existential new reality that's emerging out of the evolutionary process?
Well, I wouldn't call it evolutionary except in a weapons system growth.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cuban Missile Crisis was frightening and dangerous, but it wasn't omnicidal.
Wasn't, but by omnicidal, could that be translated into, let's say, speaking in terms of Homo sapien, a species that evolved 200,000 years ago in Africa, that it could be wipe out the entire Homo sapien species with weapons that exist if they were unleashed in an irrational unleashing of the power? It would have nothing to do with rationality. It would be an irrational thing that is now there that wasn't there even within our early lifetime. Or
Well, it's a big planet, and it's divided into
yeah,
6 continents that are
Yeah.
populated, and it's possible that a deadly war that involved major interchanges.
Yeah.
Just take one. If one
full
tried.
tilt boogie, they would say. Full tilt boogie, just
Yeah.
everything go.
If it all flew, you'd and you were democratic in your where you sent it, rather just in one place. If
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
if you shared generously with everybody, so you'd. The only question would be whether you'd have enough to go around, and when you see that one sub could take out all the centers of human population in Europe or
Staggering.
North America.
It may make that be a possibility, that is the ontologic reality that newly has evolved within our lifetime, is what I'm getting at in a certain sense. After 10,000 generations, we reach a point of existential new reality in the universe evolutionarily.
It has to be arrested, there's no doubt about it. But there's more than that we have to arrest. But while we have the will, it's hard to imagine how it is that we can still be seeking better ways of killing massive numbers of people than what we've already got, because we've gone beyond the limit of rationality.
Oh yeah, it has, yeah, right.
Way beyond. The tried and new system is way beyond the limits of rationality.
And that's one of our weapon systems.
Yeah.
There are other addendum to that, but that's just staggering. And,
Yeah.
and that's the reality. We have chapter and verse on that.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any possibility that the greater number of people, the Homo, what do we got, 7 billion, something like that? It's been 10,000 generations we've been here on the planet, apparently. And from 200,000 years ago when we appear, evolution out of Homo habilis or something, that we may be extending our conscious capability to affect the environment and make the world different than in an Eden-like sense is the lot of most of the creatures, that we may have gotten to a point where we have a technologically augmented capability to provide for everyone in a Niagara proportion that is equally existentially significant on the livingry side, or what Bucky Fuller would have called livingry as opposed to killingry. That we have one that's equally a potential for liberation that's not been available to us technologically coming out of history. So there might be a positive counterbalance to the negative that is characteristic of the time in which we sit and talk now.
Well, certainly we have, through technology, the capacity to radically alter the environment for the better.
Yes.
But those in power that make the decisions are not looking at it that way. They're still looking at the power to dominate rather than the power to liberate.
That is. You've had wide experience at all levels of society, and that seems to be still the major thing that motivates the political process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That plus profit.
So the economics and the politics are joined at the hip.
But soon the profit in the environment will be big. You can make a handsome profit on doing things that are helpful rather than harmful.
Yeah, right. I wonder if it might be that we're at a time of possible jump-up time, jubilee time, end of, the end of a long... James Joyce had Daedalus say, history is a nightmare, one could add, of injustice for the vast majority, from which we're attempting to awaken. That we might be coming to an awakening moment of transformation and elemental justice that is so longing for in the hearts of the people. But now we have an ability to realize a qualitative transformation in the a liberation of the human society, that if we had proper leadership and political leadership and economic theorizing and so forth, we might be able to be at an equally existentially significant liberating moment as we are at a time of the devastation on a massive scale of the evolutionary process itself, apparently, or possibly. If you understand, is this an unusually pregnant moment in the evolution of consciousness? Or is that
It's
too...
hard to see. Leadership still thinks in terms of power
Yes.
and domination. And we can't take much more of that. You know,
I know, it's
we've
coming.
got to be working on the other side of the docket that
Yeah.
tries to replenish and nurture rather than exercise power, the power of destruction, the threat of destruction. And we've got a long way to go psychologically to change
Yeah.
that, even on the environment.
Absolutely.
And we talk a lot about the environment, but we don't do much, you know.
Yeah, right. You're
We're
right.
still in a losing game with the environment. And that's what keeps us alive.
Yeah, absolutely it is, and it's there. And methane's being unleashed now, and you know, they finally got their northwest passage through the Arctic Sea, which is unleashing a lot of old mastodons and whatnot, which is polluting the environment. And the science is in, it seems to me, on global warming, and yet you've got all kinds of people who argue. The reified institutions that are all around us are being repaired to, rather than thinking futuristically in a new kind of way. You know, it's an intellectual change. Do you think the intellectual community has been compromised?
It plays a lesser role than it ever has, I think.
You think so?
Yeah.
Could you talk to that?
Well, I think it's because of technology and the concentration of power that, I mean, if you just look at universities, they're much more focused on high-tech jobs and high-tech science and than they are in what society needs to live together to protect ourselves from destruction of the environment and to learn to love each other rather than kill each other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You think it's trending that way through, let's say, year of my lifetime. It's getting less and less looking at some humanistic values that are really should be in the equation are being overlooked.
No, sadly, I would have to say that my strong impression of higher education is that it's given up on a cultural education that enriches a sense of how you live among each other with love and creatively rather than power and destruction.
Yeah, it's just they've taken over. Also, it's become highly specialized.
Highly specialized and all looking at money.
Pardon?
Looking at money.
That was
jobs that advance you.
Do you think
money.
specialization is the way toward, in the way the society's organized now and the values that are permeating it? Specialization is the means toward becoming, gaining income for one's life living and so forth. If somebody's highly specialized, there's more value added, all these kind of argumentations. And so that you got everything divided up into highly specialized disciplines that they become very knowledgeable about, but they can't think about the big picture. There's no systems thinking or large intellectual thinking about the whole system. It's because they're so entranced with this niceties of the specialization that they've been taught to has been taught to them in the educational process.
Yeah, we're narrowing the minds of people by sharpening them on their particular interests and skills, and we need to look more universally at the human condition, the human past, the human history, and the creative side of humanity.
I think you're right, yeah.
We need to know more about our history and know more about how we live together with respect and dignity for each other.
Absolutely. And the interconnectedness of all the things, because reality is a seamless web. Yeah. Everything is connected to everything else. And we used to do give some credence to systems thinking, They had the colonial powers in Egypt or in Europe, in Africa, would divide and conquer the tribes or the groups. You divide, make them fight, and so on. So in academia, they divided and conquered the intellectual process writ large into so many specializations that nobody can think, or they don't encourage. There should be a department of everything at a university level in a certain sense. We used to go toward that with what's called liberal arts or humanities and so on. But yeah, I understand what I'm getting at educationally. They just don't have any comprehensive systems pattern recognizing between the interconnection of the whole of what is called reality.
Yeah, I think we're destroying higher education by making it high tech
Oh yeah.
rather than high humanity. What we need to do is realize that we now have the capacity to produce more than we need with fewer and fewer people working at it.
We really don't need the people.
We need to spend more time on the humanitarian side of how we live together in peace, how we learn to love each other, how we benefit from studying different cultures and different histories, and enriching ourselves as individuals that way rather than just pressing for money and fame.
Yeah, right. But that is the primary thing now, I think.
No question about
it. I mean, and that's unfortunate that is the case.
It's a dead-end road that will destroy us. We don't need all those jobs. You know, we need to build a public throughout the world that has a better understanding of fundamental values and history and culture, and not in high-tech manufacturing of unnecessary necessities.
They have, I'm in television. I did my work in geography. It was very comprehensive. You could get away with being interested in a lot of different things and call it geography. So I guess I was tending toward that direction of wanting, and then I got in touch with Bucky Fuller, who was a comprehensivist, and Isaac Asimov, and some thinkers, and everything like that. But it's just not, and there needs to be more of that kind of thinking. I don't know, economic theorizing. Have you had an economic theory that has guided your political thinking and so forth? There has been some great economic thinkers, Lord Keynes, Schumpeter and Van Hayek, and all of the economics profession. Have you studied or paid much attention to that in terms of what motivated your values and so forth? And one that might be relevant to dealing with the reality we were discussing about trying to get human values at the fore and maybe away from the idea of just distributing demand or buying power only to the people through their having a job, which many see as they're like serfs on a feudal estate. The assets are all more and more responsible for production, and they're all owned by a tiny plutocratic class and
controlled by fewer and fewer people.
Yeah, right, and it's becoming more concentrated. Do you have an economic philosophy that's informed your thinking or so forth?
Yeah, when I started school at the University of Texas, they had some pretty tall thinking economists that saw our concentration of wealth as deadly for the general population, and the need and the glorification of wealth is a form of sickness, you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So what you need is free public education, university education, education not about technology, not that you abandoned it, but you ask, is it good for children before you get into it?
Yeah.
Is it good for your the well-being of your society? And you try to uplift all of your people by a general education that's equal and open and free. The GI Bill was a revolutionary breakthrough.
I went to college on the GI Bill.
Yeah, I've got all my degrees on the GI Bill.
Yeah.
It sent, I'm not sure I have the figure exactly right, but it sent in the low millions of people to college who had never had a member of their family go to college before.
Right, yeah, right, you're right, that's right.
And that creates expectations that spreads out widely.
Yeah.
Because in the old days, to go to college is just what rich kids did, you know?
Well, you know, I shared with you my daddy. He was a lawyer in Detroit, middle class. And he and both my mother, they were born about the turn of the century. And I think they graduated from Northwestern High School. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was only about 35% of the nation had graduated from, at that time, graduated from high school.
From high school, yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so there's been some improvement that way. But I mean, like, were you ever cottoned on to, as they say in the vernacular, like Henry George, or some of the philosophy of Karl Marx, or of Lord Keynes, or did it influence your thinking that had effect? Because the political and the economic seem to be joined at the hip.
Yeah. I wrestled with all of those and, and enjoyed them and benefited from them, but I came to believe that our present condition, or our changing condition, is so different than the world that they lived in and knew that their formulas don't apply precisely. We have to think anew and act anew because our world is a new world.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
The,
When did the their things did apply to the time in which they were writing? Let's just say 1848 or something. You know. Or something. And when did the change happen? And are there any emerging thoughts, or even identification of major systemic problems that exist that would refer to the economic theorizing, and then for that the informing of economic policies that could actually affect the human condition?
Well, the change came slowly, but at an accelerating pace.
Yes.
And it's faster now than it's ever been, and we need to spread the opportunity for everybody to develop a full personality, a fully based understanding of the world.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody realized their full potential? Wouldn't that be something to be
a wild
dreamed
place,
of? Yeah.
But and we don't all have to be stars. I mean, it's just the enjoyment of realizing that you can come to understand the world in which you live in, rather than just get cornered and hold a grudge against it.
Thank you. And there's so much of that now, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it's encouraged.
Yeah.
It's really okay. I know Lord Keynes. He set up a good deal of the economic order, the Bretton Woods and the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and all these kind of things. And he wrote a great. I just wonder what you think. He wrote a letter to his grandchildren in 1930, and he said, because he's like demand side as opposed to supply side and everything, and he wrote and he said that in their maturity, the grandchildren at that time, 1930, it'd be about now, in their maturity, you're going to be confronted with something that's very hard to understand. It's going to be massive, technologically induced, massive unemployment. And we look at the figures now, they're having a hard time to get, that the technology is coming so rapidly, and it's not only just an information with the, Moore's law and doubling with the thing, but also I just noticed that the robotization is coming to the productive process of goods and services, and that everything that's being produced, they got a channel, science channel, they got a little series they keep running, how it's made. And all the things, televisions, automobiles, airplanes, everything like how it's made, just thing after thing, the robotization is joined to the information, and you go and everything's being made, and it's being made in practically everything on a mass scale, the things that make up the market, is being made by robots. They're just people there standing watching the robot, but the robots are coming in and displacing the only way that the legitimate political paradigm, which we've come out of, the Employment Act of 46, that the way you're going to distribute income to the masses of the people is through their having a job. And their massive unemployment may be coming. You've got a tremendous productive capability, But you don't need people to do like Henry Ford needed people on the assembly line to turn those nuts and so forth. You just don't need people to be able to turn it out. And that's the only way we have to distribute buying power to the masses of the people, is them having a job on the estate, and the capital instruments are all owned by a tiny plutocratic class. Can you understand? Do you think that that's a case that we're being, and that if you had an alternate way to distribute demand, people would be free then to do and be concerned with the goods of civilization like history and humanity and so forth, that they could be interested in, rather than being what some people call wage slaves on an estate where all the assets are owned by a tiny plutocratic class. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just wonder if you could comment on possible technological displacement of labor, or the labor theory of value.
Well, I think it's outdated. We have to recognize the difference in the nature of life on the different continents, and
right, absolutely,
which is very, very important to do, and Africa and basic huge parts of Asia, but we have to alter our view of the good life and what's good for children, what will help our society be a better society.
Yes.
The individual lead a happier and more constructive life, and it's we can produce more unnecessary necessities than are good for anybody, but that's not an end for life.
Okay,
It has to be. We have to invest much more in health care.
Mm-hmm.
We have to invest much more in education. We're doing just the opposite. You know? We're abandoning education, is the truth of the matter, particularly higher education, and an education on what human purposes ought to be and what human condition, how it ought to
ethics,
change.
oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
Above all, if we really put the potential labor force to manufacturing on the planet, well, there'd be a big Swiss cheese in about 10 years or something, you know, because we just consume everything and be no better off for it.
I'm sorry, what was that to say? What did you say?
If we tried to, if the idea was to give everybody a meaningful, productive job, and we just consume the resources of the planet for unnecessary necessities. We've got to see that, particularly in the economically advanced societies, that the end has to be more than just a job that makes you a lot of money.
That seems to be what most, and so many people are driven to have only that thought in mind. I got to get some money.
Yeah, but we're going to be an unhappy society because it's going to be it's the 1% now that's big rich, and the satisfied proportion is not very good. But it's not a satisfying life, and it's not something that you can continue to do. You've got to realize that with our booming populations, which you have to contain, because the planet just can't handle it. We want the place to be a garden, not a brawl, you know. You're
worried about a Malthusian argument or Paul Ehrlich with the population bomb, and it seems to be the UN says it's going to level off at about 10 billion.
Well, it'll have to, but it won't be because of our thinking or caring or planning or acting.
Oh, but that it could be.
It could be, yeah. No, it could be. It ought to be, and beyond that, it better be.
That's right.
It's going to be
and
hell.
Worth striving toward.
It's going to be hell if we don't pay attention to what we're doing.
Yeah.
But that, so that means we need to, just things like what we call the Peace Corps, or the CCC during Roosevelt's days, Civilian Conservation Corps.
Yeah.
Those are great things.
Absolutely.
We're going to go to beautiful forests and preserve our environment, and we're going to send kids over to help the kids in other continents who are going to die young if someone doesn't come and help them.
And if the people that helped best than any of it, some of the people that went. Some of the people that went from here to go there to help other people might have helped those people that went more than the people, or it would have been beneficial to us. to have such a goal and to have
It makes
such
our people much better when they have been involved in that service. But instead, we're talking about, competition and production of unnecessary necessities between China and the United States and Western Europe and the rest.
same old stuff.
It's dangerous and junk and can't go on.
Yeah, it can. So we're coming to a pretty pass, and the things are there. It might free people if they have some sort of a thing where they have the ability to have income, so they could. If I may, I'm sorry. I'm in Detroit, and my people used to live down on 18th, 16th Street down in Detroit. And Henry Ford, when he was a lad of 8 or 9, used to tinker in their garage before he went out and built the Rouge plant and did that. And the people coming off the farms, or they had all the combines and whatnot coming along, producing that, would come to Detroit. And they had to have those people on the assembly line to get the products going out. Now, if you get it to where you can put out the products and you don't need the people, and if you had a way for there to be some ownership of the productive part of the economy, robots and whatnot, so that people would have income, then they could be interested, they could be free to be interested in things that really matter, the goods of civilization, like the ethics and the things you're talking about, rather than seeing themselves merely as an addendum to a productive process they have no ownership or no right to or anything, but they would just have income come into them so they could be free to do what they want, which would very likely be a big role for real education, systems education, and the internet's a great learning place, and the thing, you know what I'm saying? It could be, instead of being surrogate robots, they could be real human beings interested in the things that we're talking about, and there could be opportunities for them to fulfill something really worthwhile rather than just filling a notch for producing products that can be done by automation and so forth. I don't know if that's a promise or a conundrum, but our system is just the only way. Some few people are going to own everything, and everybody else is just going to be getting wages on the estate of the people who own everything. There's a conundrum there or something. I don't know.
No, it's an urgent necessity that we change. And you can't. It's not healthy to pay people wages to do nothing. And with technology, you don't really need the labor. So you've got to recognize that we need population control, but we need to make a good life for the population we have.
Right.
And the population we have needs to have an opportunity for knowledge,
absolutely,
for health,
yeah,
for family, for values that are good for children,
right,
good for the next generation.
Absolutely, and particularly the next generation. Yes.
If there's going to be many more generations.
We're going to have more generations.
We're in a race between, as was said a century ago, more than that now, between education and catastrophe.
I think that's true. Yeah, that's really
but
true.
Catastrophe is looming high above us, and the solution is to get away from the arms race completely. The idea that, just look where we are with Korea right now. It's the stupidity of ever leading the world into such a condition.
Yeah.
And what's our solution to it? Better weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah. It's insanity.
When it has to be the abolition of weapons of mass destruction, the abolition of weapons because you don't need them, because you're committed to living together and with dignity and respect and love for each other.
Yeah, and to have a condition that it favors that. Yeah. James Lovelock out of England has this idea of Gaia, or another thing out of biology, that in the human organism apparently there's something like 100 trillion cells in a human organism. That's a lot of cells. And they're all matter, and they're all connected. They're all connected in a systems way to a system. And he's got this thing in seeing the earth in a certain sense as an organic process of evolution. And so it would be wonderful, like we said before, if everybody could be realizing their full maximum potential, given their own inner-directed sense of participation in a world that's just and appropriate, and of favoring everyone to realize their full potential, that might be something that could be a model that we would want to get to. But the Chinese said they spare us from living in interesting times because that's when it's the most dangerous, and also when it's the most, potential of a qualitative, liberating potentiality. That may be the time we were either blessed or cursed to be born into, possibly this time now. After
Well,
10,000 generations, it
Yeah.
seems a little strange, but it might be.
But this is the most dangerous, and the next will be more dangerous if we don't change quickly. China's come out of tragic poverty. I was there in '48, and they couldn't bury their dead in many parts of the country.
Horrible.
They'd have to drag them out to the edge of the road, and carts would come by and stack them up like cordwood to get them rid. And then the failing system of the capitalists, with Chiang Kai-shek had to flee to Taiwan, and China had to come through very, very hard years. But still, it sees the world differently. It wants to produce as we produce, and we're overproducing already.
Yeah, that's reifying the old paradigm, or reifying outdated institutions out of history.
Yeah.
Well, if there's anybody who's been leading the charge, as it were, in a very real and responsible way toward trying to get things right, it's, I would suggest, one of the very leading edge people who've been doing that great and noble task is this fellow called Ramsey Clark. And I'd like to thank you for all the good work. You have a bio that is an inspiration to a great number of people, and I thank you very, very much for all the good work that you've been doing. I would hope maybe that even educationally and so forth, the public access television might become a place. We've got 3,000 of them across this nation, spreading around the world. They might become a place for autodidactic people who've been liberated from a slave wage system and so forth to become educated to some of the principles that you've been fostering, and might be one of the hopes of the world. And I just keep up the good work, and maybe we could enlist you over here at MNN to become a producer and faculty for this worldwide educational task. But thank you very much, Ramsey, for all the work and for coming in today.
Well, thank you. You got to have a good time in life too.
You got to have a good time.
You're missing out if you don't.
Yeah, you got to have a good time. Yeah, right.
And help others have a good time.
And helping others is really the source of a great deal of what rings in the whole soul of the person as a good time, don't you think?
Amen.
Or it ought to be,
Yeah.
more than it is,
Absolutely.
rather than just self-centered greed and selfishness that has been characteristic of a historical condition that James Joyce correctly had Daedalus say is a history of a nightmare of injustice that we're perhaps transcending. So once again, thank you very much. We in Conversation invite you to tune in. It's been your pleasure, the perceptions of a true intellectual and moral leader of the human scenario, that being Ramsey Clark. Happy to share that perception with you. Invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again, tomorrow. And Ramsey Clark, once again, thank you very, very much again for everything. Good night. We'll see you next week. So we got about 3 seconds left. Some quick word?